Hi guys, it's Will here again, back for another fight card this weekend. UFC 161 from the MTA Centre in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. The first time that the UFC have went into Manitoba, and it's headlined by a light heavyweight fight between Sugar Rashad Evans and the former Strikeforce champ Dan Henderson. Last week's card, if you watched it, sick card. On Twitter, I saw people moaning about there wasn't enough KOs or TKOs. What the fuck? There was a submission clinic, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu clinic, the whole card. Saw some great submissions back in Brazil, and I don't know why people were getting so pissed off that there wasn't more KOs or TKOs. I thought that the card was absolutely sick all the way through. But see, that's just my preference. Eric Silva looked very dominant over Jason High. I expect big things from him this year. I don't think the loss to John Fitch is a bad thing for him. And Fabrizio Verdum's probably put himself in position to face either the winner of GDS and Kane in the trilogy fight later on this year. Whether he deserves it or not, I don't think he really does, but who else is going to be in line for the shot? But we're going to go into this week's card. It's UFC 161, as I said. This card looked really, really good, but it's had a host of injuries. We had Henan Barao. He was going to defend his title against Eddie Wineland. Then we had Shogun Hua, who was going to be fighting Little Nog. And both those fights have been scratched due to injuries. And it's now headlined by Rashad Evans and Dan Henderson, with a co-main event of Roy Nelson against Stipe Miocic. I feel for the people of Manitoba, because they had a really good card to look forward to, and it's kind of been taken away from them. There's other couple of good fights. There was Isaac Valley Flag and Stam Stout as well. I thought that might have been a really competitive fight. But as I say, we've lost a couple of fights off the card and they've been scratched. But we've still got a decent card here in Manitoba. Just hopefully really the fights go really well for them, because this kind of I seem to remember like UFC 149 was like this with Faber and Brow, and it was a stinker card. It's one of the worst cards UFC's put on a long time. So I just hope the people of Canada get a really decent card here. But we're going to go start away down in the bantamweight division. It's Yves Jubain against Dustin Paige. Dustin Paige, he needs to win this fight, or he's out of the UFC. I reckon he's lost to the last couple, and Jubain needs to come back after that loss to Brad Pickett when he got knocked out. I think this is a really tough fight for Paige, and I think it's a really good fight for Yves Jubain to get back in the winners circle. So I'm going to go with Jubain by. I think he might knock him out. I think he will knock him out in the second round. Next up, we've got Mitch Clark against John Maguire. Don't care much for this fight. I'm not a big John Maguire fan. It's his first fight down at lightweight after fighting up at welterweight and losing a couple, I think. Mitch Clark, don't really know much about. I've only seen his fights that he's been in the UFC and looked a wee bit at him. But I think John Maguire will win this by submission, first or second round. Next up, we've got Roland Delorme against Edwin Figueroa. Delorme's coming off. He actually lost his last fight, and it got ruled a no contest as Francisco Rivera failed the drugs test. He got knocked out in that fight, but he was coming off a couple of wins over Nick Deney and Josh Ferguson before that. So yeah, he's coming off a couple of wins, even though he lost his last fight there. So Edwin Figueroa, he's been in a couple of really good fights in the UFC. He was in a cracker with Michael McDonald. I think it was his first fight in the UFC. That was a great fight. Wins over Reinhardt and Alex Caceres before he lost to Francisco Rivera last time out. So it's a big fight for him here. I'm going to go Roland Delorme. He's going to win this by decision, I think. But if it goes to the ground, I think he may submit Figueroa in this bout. So Roland Delorme, unanimous decision, I think. Next up, we've got Sean Pearson against Kenny Robertson. Doesn't seem like that much an exciting fight. I think Kenny Robertson is he stepping in here for somebody? Yeah, he is. TJ Waldberger was supposed to be fighting Sean Pearson, but Kenny Robertson has stepped in here to face Sean Pearson. Now, Sean Pearson, he was kind of a little bit of hype train when he came into the UFC. He won one fight and looked decent doing it. But he's kind of been shown that he can get hit with a big shot and he doesn't really kind of recover from it. Wins over Matt Riddle. Jake Hecht and Lance Benoist with a couple of losses to credible opponents, let's be honest, and Dong Young Kim and Jake Ellenberger, who are both studs in the divisions. But this is a fight that he should win against Robertson here. I think Robertson's the wrestler here, so it might be quite tough on him. But Kenny Robertson last fought UFC 157. He won by submission against Brock Jardine. So he's got a fight here with Sean Pearson, which I think this is a toss-em fight. Any one of these guys can win the fight. I think I'm going to go Sean Pearson by decision as well. I think it's going to be a decision fight. But to be honest with you, I'm not really looking forward to these fights. They're not great fights. Next up, we've got Sam Stout against James Krause. Now, James Krause is a fighter that he tried to go in tough. I think he lost in the fights to get into the house. He's a fighter who's been around quite a long time. He's fought kind of all over the place, WEC, Bellator, Titan Fighting Championships, with kind of wins and losses throughout there. But this is his chance in the big time here to come into the UFC after Isaac Vallie-Flagg got injured against a credible opponent in Sam Stout and make a name for himself. I really hope he does it because I like James Krause. He's a good guy to follow on Twitter as well. So go follow him there. Krause is on I think it's a 7-fight win streak at the minute, so he's coming in with a bit of confidence here. Sammy Stout, been in the UFC for years, probably about close to 20 fights in the UFC. He's faced a lot of good opponents. He won his last fight, UFC 157, against Carlos Fedor, before losing to Matt Desi. He beat Spencer Fisher, which I don't think he deserved. Lost to Tavares, beat Eve Edwards with a killer punch. Paul Taylor, sorry. A lot of his fights go to decisions, and I reckon this will go to decision as well. I want James Krause to win. I think Sam Stout will win. But see, James Krause, I hope he really impresses and gets another shot in the UFC after this, because I think he deserves it. Really good guy. So Sam Stout by split decision. On to the main, on to the main card. The last fight of the FX prelims. It's Jake Shields against Tyron Woodley in the welterweight division. Now, Tyron Woodley, his UFC debut, explosive, knocked out Jay Haron. Looked very good in doing it. His only loss in his career is to Nate Marquardt when they were fighting for the Strikeforce welterweight championship. He's beaten some good fighters in there. Tarek Safadine, Paul Daly, Jordan Meehan as well. So he's fought some really good fighters. Jake Shields, a former Strikeforce champ. He's beat some of the best. He beat Hendo, but since he's come over the UFC, he hasn't looked great, let's be honest. He fought GSP for the title. Didn't do that bad. I think GSP could have finished him when he kind of wanted to in that fight if he wanted. But he's come over UFC. He got a win over Martin Kampman, which he was sloppy. Before losses to GSP and then Jake Ellenberger, which was a tough fight because his dad had just died. He beat Akiyama. And then I think he beat Ed Hammond, but that was a no contest because he failed the drugs test. So I'm going to go Tyron Woodley here, and I think he can knock Jake Shields out. I think he will knock Jake Shields out. I think he'll do it in the second round. And Tyron Woodley is one of the guys to kind of look out for in that division because he's a great wrestler and he's got some power in his hands. So next up we're on the main card, and it starts with the heavyweights. Now this is one of my favourite fighters. Every time I see his name, you're going to get fireworks. Pat Barry against Sean Jordan. Now Pat Barry I think is one of the funniest guys on Twitter to follow. He's a really good guy, interacts with his fans, and when he goes in the octagon, you know you're going to get a knockout or something crazy is going to happen. It's always been like that when he fought all the way back there in Crow Cop. He was cuddling and stuff like that, and then he got tapped out. But it was the fight with Chet Congo where it looked like he blasted him out twice, and Congo come back and knocked him out. He always puts on exciting fights, and he provides entertainment. Every fight, his knockout of Christian Warcraft was another good one. But the guy is just, I can't say enough good things about him. I just wish he was. I think he could give some people if he was a better wrestler and stuff like that, a lot of good fights. He's coming off a win over Shane Del Rosario way back last year when he knocked him out, and it was exciting as well. I'm really hoping he wins this fight. He's against Sean Jordan here. I think he can beat Sean Jordan. Jordan's I think he was a former football player, quite athletic guy. He's coming off a win over Mike Russell. Had a stinker of a fight against Czech Congo in that really bad UFC 149 card. With before that wins over Ollie Thompson and LeVar Johnson. I'm not giving two shits about Sean Jordan in this fight. I want Pat Barry to come out and knock him out, and I hope he does that and move on, because I really want to see a fight between Pat Barry and Mark Hunt, because I just think it could be an absolute war on the feet and the fans would absolutely love it. So I'm going to go Pat Barry knockout first round. Next up, we've got a couple of women making their debut in the UFC. We've got Alexis Davis from Canada taking on Rosie Sexton from England here. Sexton's moving up to the division here, 135. She's fought mainly in Cage Warriors over here. She fought Gina Carano way back in the day. I think that's maybe her only loss. No, sorry, it's not her only loss. It's she lost to Frausto, I think it was. Zola Jagel, that was the other loss there. So she's lost to a couple of decent fighters, and she's coming off her wins over Roxanne Modafferi and Aisling Daly. She hasn't fought in about a year, so maybe a little bit of ring rust and a bit of nerves coming into the UFC here. But she's another good person to follow on Twitter, so go and follow her. Alexis Davis, she's faced a lot of really good fighters in Invicta and Strikeforce, and she's faced some of the top women in the world in there. She's coming off a win over Shayna Baszler at Invicta 4 way back in January. She lost to Sarah Kaufman in a war, with wins over Julie Kedzie and Amanda Nunes as well. I think she's number 6 in the rankings. So this is a big fight for her. She can move up, maybe face maybe a Zingano if she comes back, if she doesn't get a title shot, or just somebody that's a bit higher up than she is. Maybe a Carmouche if she wins in Seattle later in the year. So Rosie Sexton, as I say, I think I really like her to do well in her UFC debut here. But I expect Alexis Davis to win this fight and move onwards and upwards in the division. Next up, we've got Ryan Jimmo against Igor Prakaets. Not really too kind of interested in this fight, let's be honest. Jimmo, he lost his last fight, James Tahuna in London. Before that, they had the knockout, the 7-second knockout of Anthony Perosh. They beat Sokaju before that, but not really giving two shits in this fight, let's be honest. It's not a great fight. I think Igor Prakaets is coming back off a loss as well. A no contest, in fact, after Joey Beltran tested positive for banned substances. Before that, he lost to Vinny Magalhaes by the submission. Wins before that over Maldonado, Soshinsky and Todd Brown. Ryan Jimmo, I think he'll win. I think he'll get a decision win, and he may knock him out as well, but I'm not really big on that fight at all. So we move on to the co-main event. We've got Roy Nelson. I think his last fight in Strikeforce deal, UFC deal. So this might be the last time we see him in the UFC, maybe. And he's against Stipe Miocic. It's a guy I really liked. He can wrestle and he can box, but I just think Roy Nelson is on a roll at the minute and he's knocking people out, and he's just going to throw, and he will catch Miocic with something heavy and just take him out. He's coming. Struve, this is his first fight since September last year when he got knocked out by Stefan Struve. He had a couple of good wins before that. He beat Del Rosario and he beat De Vries and Beltran as well in his previous 3 UFC fights. I just think this is a really, really, really tough fight against Roy Nelson, who is, let's face it, is one of the best in the UFC heavyweight division. In this kind of level, he's not elite, but he can give you a really good fight. As you've seen with GDS, he can take big shots. He's coming off 3 knockout wins over Dave Herman, Mamet Trion and Czech Congo when he knocked him out at UFC 159. So I think this is going to go the same way. Would like to see Miocic win. I'm a fan of Miocic, I must admit. But I think that Nelson will catch him with that big overhand right and just take him out. So Roy Nelson by KO TKO, second round. And then we've got the main event, which is Sugar Rashad Evans against Dan Henderson. Both veterans of the sport, both champions. This is a really good fight, and it's a big fight in the division because Rashad Evans looked horrible last time out against Little Nog. Dan Henderson, he didn't really look great against Leo Machida, but it's never great to look good against Leo Machida. A win here puts him right up there in the top 5, ready to go again. You got Glover Teixeira. I think this could be a possible fight for the Teixeira. after he won his last fight against Tahuna. Both good wrestlers, both big bangers as well. More than Henderson, he can really hurt people. He's got one shot knockout power like we've seen with Michael Bisping. So yeah, and Rashad Evans has got leg kicks like he did against no leg kicks, sorry, head kick knockouts. Sean Salmon, the vicious knockout of Chuck Liddell. This is a really tough fight, and I just think maybe Rashad Evans' speed might be a bit much for Dan Henderson. I think I can maybe see him taking Henderson down, maybe, and then getting back to his feet and just engaging and trying a few pop shots, then going again. Personally, I would like to see Dan Henderson win the fight, because I would like to see him face John Jones. I think he deserves that match that he never got at UFC 151. But I'm going to go with Rashad Evans by unanimous decision over the 5 rounds. 3 rounds this. Oh, I thought it was 5 rounds. I could be wrong with that again, but I apologise. But I'm going to go with Sugar Rashad Evans by unanimous decision there. And then that's us. So tell me your predictions. That's mine there. I'm doing actually really well in my predictions in Tapology at the minute. Come and follow me on there. Go and make your picks at Tapology. Come follow me on Twitter, BigBulber7MMA. And I think we're back for the big fight on early July. 6th of July, UFC 162 with the UFC middleweight champion. Probably the best fighter in mixed martial arts. I like John Jones. I'll put John Jones up there, but he is the best. Anderson Silva, when he's going to lose his title to Chris Weidman. I firmly believe that Weidman's going to pose problems for him. And that card is stacked. That is stacked. Frank Yeager, Charles Oliveira, Tim Kennedy, Roger Gracie, Chan Sung Jung against Ricardo Lamas, Dennis Seaver against Cub Swanson. I could go on. You've got Chris Liebman's on the card. You've got Edson Barboza. You've got Mark Munoz as well. It's a really, really, really solid card all the way through, and that's going to be in a couple of weeks. So, as I say, that's my picks. Enjoy your fights this weekend. I'll be back popping out probably on the Monday of that week on the run up to UFC 162. But yeah, enjoy the fights, and I will speak to you all soon. Take care.